and welcome to this edition of Faith and the Common Good, brought to you by North Coast United Methodist Church. I am your host, Pastor Harris. We welcome you to this conversation about issues in our community that are relevant to all of us as we attempt to work together to make our community the best place that it can be. Today we're fortunate to be in conversation with Sean Berkshire, who is the Public Relations Officer at Casa de Amparo, and he and I will be in conversation about an often neglected and certainly difficult issue to address, that being child abuse. Scripture calls us to care for children. Children being the most vulnerable, children being the most oftentimes least considered in our decision-making and our processes as we look to community development and the like. But we want to speak specifically to the issue of our ability and inability to recognize the fact that many children in our community are being abused. Welcome, Sean.
Thank you so much for having me, Pastor
We're
Harris.
so happy that you have come, and we know that this will be an enlightening conversation.
Of course.
And we thank you for your willingness to be present with us, as well as to offer to us insight into this very critical issue in our community. Firstly, I'd like you to share with us the work that your organization does and how the organization came to be.
Sure. So Casa de Amparo started in Oceanside in 1978 by actually a group of local women. They saw a problem with child abuse and neglect in the county, and through the help of local firefighters and police officers, they founded Casa de Amparo. And so they actually started right at the old mission here off the 76, and it grew in 1980 to incorporate the Hayward Child Development Center, which is here in Oceanside as well, and that's for our kids 0 to 5 years old. There we do everything from family rehabilitation to family visitation if the child's been removed from the home, but it's basically escalated from there. We've taken on older and older populations. So now currently in San Marcos, we've got a residential facility, and that's for kids who are in the foster care system or have been removed from the home. There we give them therapy, housing, provide them with all the tools to kind of rehabilitate their lives. And from then on, we also have New Directions, which is here in Oceanside, which are for those kids 18 to 26 who have emancipated themselves out of the foster care system. There we provide apartments, furnishings, clothes for job interviews, job skills training, everything that they kind of need to pursue them out into the world.
Let's offer a definition of our conversation today.
Sure.
When we say child abuse, of what are we speaking?
So the federal government classifies child abuse as any act or inaction of a parent or guardian that results in death, abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, or trauma of a child. So basically anybody that's in charge of a young person, whether that's direct action, physical abuse or verbal abuse, or inaction, neglect, not caring if a kid goes to school, that's all within the definition of child abuse.
And unfortunately, the reality is so in our region and in our county.
It is, and it's surprising how many people we speak to and they have no idea. Yearly, we get about 20,000 calls to the San Diego Children's Helpline, and that's only the calls that are reported. So it's definitely not an isolated issue. It's all over the county. I don't want to use the word rampant, but it is definitely one of the higher statistics as far as child abuse goes in the state. So one of the things that we really try to do with people is not only show them what our services are, but educate them about child abuse and neglect, about the warning signs, what to look for, and then how to call and how to report those instances so we can get the kids help and get the parents help, because it's normally not just a one-sided issue. It is a family collective issue that we're working with.
And not only is it a family collective issue, it's an issue that crosses all groupings of people.
Every race, every niche in this community it affects. There's not one group or not one group who isn't affected. I mean, that's one of the great things that I get to do daily is I work with so many different people and so many different backgrounds, and not only does it allow you to grow and help these kids, but it helps me grow individually to kind of learn about the differences and appreciate those differences that people have.
So statistically, in our county area,
Sure.
Can you speak to the numbers of children that are involved in the system, and then directly how Casa de Amparo supports?
Sure. So like I said, I mean, of those 20,000, about 19 to 18,000 of those are actually filed upon with the police, so the police will investigate. It's all up to the police and the people reporting whether these kids get or don't get help, because a lot of it is an evidence-based issue. Yearly, Casa de Amparo helps 1,000 kids a year. We help 90 families, 54 of which, 900 families, 54 of which are military families as well. So when you take a look at that, I mean, we could always use more help, but we're definitely putting a dent in it.
Surely so. With that dent, then, what do you think the impact, firstly, of the larger issue, and then secondly, of the kind of care and response that you were offering?
Sure. I mean, what I can tell you is abuse is a learned behavior. So the effects that come out of abuse aren't natural to people. So a lot of the times what we find is when you can work with both the parents and the youth involved, that acts as a healing mechanism. Overall, what we want to do is educate the parents of these kids so that the abuse doesn't trickle down, because a lot of the kids who suffer from neglect or abuse often don't realize that then falls into them when they have children, just because of the way they were brought up and some of the emotional issues that they have. A lot of them don't recognize that they're being abuseful to their children or neglectful as well. So if we can stem that at the source, make people know that they're deserving of love, make people know that they are deserving of care and that everybody is worth something. Most of these kids, you know, we were lucky enough to grow up with loving parents and that stable foundation. When you don't have that, there's a lot of scariness in the world when you don't have a stabilizing factor. So what we try to do is at least take these kids who have kind of grown up with nothing and make them feel like they are capable, because that belief in yourself is what ultimately will propel you on to do well in the rest of your life.
So let's look then at the impact on the individual life.
Sure.
Tracking a child who may have been born into severity and then through life at the age of 18 or even until the age of 20, sometimes even longer because of the way family configurations are now. What are the direct emotional and physical, perhaps, or psychological signs?
Sure. So, I mean that one of the great things with our organization is with our pregnant and parenting cottage as well. So, say a girl was removed from her home from abuse, got pregnant, and had a child within our care, that child is able to take advantage of all of our programs until they're 26 years old. But if you look at the life of abuse, telltale signs are both sides. If you notice a kid's mood change suddenly, if you notice bruising, obviously, or the kid's absent from a day of school with signs of bruising going away. Physical abuse is very easy to spot. Emotional abuse is a lot harder. And that's a lot of the times involved with the sexual abuse side. So self-harm behaviors, cuttings, eating disorders, a lot of that stuff is tied in as well. So there's a lot of signs to look for, but the biggest sign is emotional responses and connection with people. If a child is normally withdrawn, then there's something going on there that maybe not be brought up or spoken about, and that's the time to step in. But it's very sexual abuse. I mean, same with the physical side. There's a lot of physical signs you can look for there, but the biggest thing is reporting it. There's nothing wrong with seeing something that you might not see as normal and giving the hotline a call, because at least it's reported. If you're afraid to call because of whatever reason, that can slip through the cracks, and that kid can go on hurting for a long time.
Surely. Clergy are required reporters. There are persons designated in school systems and other systems who are required reporters. So if there's not enough courage to call the hotline, at least making connection with those persons who are required to
Exactly, and that's the same thing with our organization. Anybody involved, myself included, if we get a call from a parent, saying, or a guardian or a child, I'm being hurt, he's being hurt, I see this, we are required to do that as well. So use us as an outlet as well. If you notice, if your audience notices something like that going on within their family structure, call us and we'll take care of that for you as well.
There are still hesitances to believe that abuse happens, particularly in an area like San Diego County, even more particularly in North County. It's just hard to believe that children are being abused. And so I know that much of your work is around the work of awareness.
Correct.
What are the primary things that you tell perhaps an incredulous ear about child abuse?
That it exists, that it's real, but there is help, and the earlier we can get to these kids, the more important it is. The longer you suffer through trauma, the harder it is to get to the bottom of that trauma. And a lot of the way we get rid of trauma is through intensive therapy. These kids talk to therapists daily, have activities that can repair some of the damage that's been done. But again, if you go until you're 15 years old being abused and it's never reported, it's a lot harder to fix those issues when you were 5 coming in.
Surely. In brief, can you offer an example of a success story?
Of course. We had what's her name? Let me think of this real quick. Joel Pierce. He was a former foster youth who ended up working at Legoland. But I mean, we've got so many success stories. It is hard to keep track of some of these kids. But I mean, one of the great things, an event that we have coming up, Meet the Chefs, our New Directions participants, the kids that are 18 to 25, actually get to act as sous chefs. And one of our youths last year actually ended up getting a job with the Brigantine because of her work with the sous chef at our Meet the Chefs program. So just job opportunities. I mean, we've seen so many people go on and do amazing things. Alex was a great guy that we feature in our Casa video, who was homeless on the streets of Ocean Beach when he came to us 2 years ago. He got his high school diploma, he got his license to drive a car, and he's now attending college classes, something which he never thought was possible. And this was somebody completely homeless. I mean, that big a turnaround and that big of a will change is a pretty powerful story for somebody to hear.
And it's good to be reminded that we care for the weakest link, if you will.
Of course.
And when all are strong, we are all strong together. And so it's our responsibility to be attentive. It's our responsibility to intervene where it's possible to intervene. And sometimes that intervention is at risk. But we have to be willing to take risk so that a child's life can have the opportunity to come to some place of love and respectability and an understanding of self-worth.
I know Martin Luther King, I believe, has a quote that says the greatest testament to a society is the way in which it treats its children.
Certainly so. We thank you, Sean, and ask you to stay with us as we take this brief break, and we'll return in just a few minutes to continue the conversation about child abuse.
This is Zoe. She's 1, and she's running for president, potentially in 2064. Because if she's kept safe and eats well, has the opportunity to learn and grow, if she has help getting ahead and support along the way, then Zoe could be president. Like her hero, Ababam Binken. Help kids like Zoe dream big. The why, for early learning, childcare, mentorship, and more. For a better us. Donate to the why at zoeforpresident.net.
I never chew tobacco.
I don't drink much.
Never smoked a cigarette in my life.
HPV. Isn't that about cervical cancer?
What does that have to do with oral cancer?
HPV? Didn't know that.
Welcome back to Faith and the Common Good, and thank you for continuing to watch this episode as we discuss the issue of child abuse in our community. It's hard to believe that children are actually abused, but it is true. And so in order to help us all understand the issue, help us all to be able to provide some support and awareness of the issue, we have in studio today Sean Berkshire, who is the Public Relations Officer at Casa de Amparo. We're so pleased that he continues to join us, and as we continue the conversation, we want to talk about ways that his work and the work of Casa de Amparo has affected this concern. Thanks, Sean, for continuing the conversation with us, and we are so happy to have this time to be in conversation with you.
Of course.
As we continue, you began to talk about many successes that have been part of individual lives. We want to look at the ways that the organization, perhaps the service industry, measure success.
Sure.
So if you could talk about model programs or other ways that success has been measured.
Definitely. So there's 6 core programs that Casa de Amparo has: residential services, family visitation, New Directions, the Hayward Child Development Center, and the Young Parent Network. And the Young Parent Network is developed specifically for those girls in our care who are pregnant and parenting. We've actually been fortunate in the last couple months, actually, we've increased our pregnant and parenting cottage to house more girls. So now we hold the most pregnant and parenting girls under 18 in San Diego County. But what I can say is, depending upon residential services with therapy, we measure happiness, how well a kid is getting along with others. With family visitation, a lot of the times we can measure stress in the home or family interaction. So a lot of the times with our family visitation or our therapy, it's a specific time frame that we kind of give, and hopefully the goal there is to reunify the family so that the children are able to return to the home.
Sure. So this is rehabilitation for both child as well as parent.
Exactly.
And it's a 2-stream course?
Definitely. So it varies. It varies on the level of severity when the child was taken. Unfortunately, most abuse and neglect occurs in a family because of substance abuse or mental health issues, and normally they're linked, one and the same. But depending on the severity, how bad the abuse occurred, we take families who maybe just have stress issues because dad goes off to fight for our military, and mom has trouble taking care of the kids at home, then resents dad, and there's that trauma, all the way up to where we will actually have guided play dates with parents whose childs have been removed because maybe they don't have the skills to take care of their own child. So we'll actually have a therapist sit with a headset on that the parent then has, and it's a guided play session. So all range of variances of severity.
Surely. And in the case of incarceration, a parent has been submitted to trial and has been convicted of child abuse. What happens in that restorative process? So
that's a tough one. I mean, it's a lot depends on the courts and the legal system there, but once the courts have given clearance and obviously they're unincarcerated, we can begin that healing process. But while that parent is incarcerated, we aim to try to provide the best care possible. So 24-hour supervision at our residential care site. We have a great chef, Rafa, who's just come on, the kids love, and we've actually started a garden so the kids are growing their own food. All of these little things are therapy. And so, when a kid has been abused and unfortunately that parent has been removed for a significant period of time, we're prepared to take that child on for however long that takes, including going into adulthood in New Directions. I think that's one of the most important programs we offer, just because that life set skill, if the abuse isn't tackled early, you're setting yourself up for a very, very big fall once you're out of that system, because once that support system is there that a kid's known their entire life, through a government program, it's a lot harder to function.
Surely so. In the case of generational concerns, meaning that you've got 3 or 4 generations that have gone through this cycle of child abuse, firstly, what are the marks of that, if they're distinctive from the traditional ways that you've described? And then secondly, how are the generations supported, grandparent, parent, and child?
Sure. So that's a huge part that plays. We see generational abuse occur all the time, and that's where you'll have abuse will start for whatever reason. Again, most of the time substance abuse, but that trickle-down effect occurs where if a child is sexually abused early, a lot of the times they become pregnant early. A lot of the times that means they have a child early, and they don't have the skill set to then take care of that child. No fault of their own, but that's abuse in itself. If you're not skilled enough to take care of a child, you're setting up your child for abuse and neglect. And like you said, that's that family core system. A lot of the times you'll see generations skip. So if you have a mother or father that's abusive, a lot of the time grandma's in the picture.
Sure.
Or vice versa. A lot of the times we see kids in our New Directions program who are then taking care of their younger siblings because the problem is stemming from the parent. So that's why it's so important to involve anybody within the family unit into this rehabilitation process, because it takes education and work together to work through a lot of the pain that's underlying the abuse.
And so often we forget, and this would be on the whole, not only on matters of abuse, but particularly on matters of abuse. We learn from our environment, and if our nuclear environment is dysfunctional, if our nuclear environment is abusive, if our nuclear environment does not express love, then that child is sent forth with each of those attributes, if you will.
Completely. Planted behavior. And I mean, that's one of the things we focus on is you are a sponge when you're a child, and so you basically look at the actions of your parents and the elders around you as the way to behave as an adult. And so, like I said, a lot of these kids unfortunately don't know they're being abused, or are too afraid to report something because they feel that there's something internally wrong with them. And that's a big piece of the emotional abuse. So it's definitely an uncharacteristic behavior. It is a taught behavior. So that's, again, why it's so important to involve the parent, because if the parent's not educated, there's no way we can rehabilitate the child.
And we also have to underscore the faith value of love.
Of course.
If love is absent, then there's very little else that's possible in the nurturing and the maturing of children.
Yes.
As well as the furtherance of one's ability to express self-esteem, self-value, self-worth, etc., to a larger society, and that would be true for both the adult and the child.
Of course, and I know we were speaking earlier, and one of the things that we are a non-religious based organization, but we are required to rehabilitate these kids in every way possible. So if any of these kids request spiritual healing, whether that's at a church, a synagogue, or a mosque, we are required to fulfill that for them. And that's something that I take great pride in, because I think just as important as understanding what's going on with you emotionally, what's hurting you physically, the spiritual aspect of healing is just as important.
Surely so, surely so. If we can talk then for a moment about advocacy. Are there legislative concerns that we need to be aware of? Are there other ways that we can be networking to support?
Of course. So right now, anybody can go and become a volunteer with our youth. The levels of that vary depending on who you want to work with. Obviously, kids in our residential care, they're very, very protected by the state, because the state is essentially their parent or guardian. But if you want to become a regular volunteer, that's an easy thing to do. You can visit www.casadeamparo.org/volunteer. There's a registration process, and if you do end up working directly with the youth, there is a background check required as well, so we make sure that we have good individuals coming in. But beyond working directly with the kids, organizing clothing drives, organizing fundraising events, any of that is available, and we would be honored to help with anybody who wants to do one of those. I mean, one of the greatest things about our organization is it's so 100% circular in terms of we don't just take money, we take socks, we take not used socks. We want kids to have new clothes, but gently used food items. I mean, so if you want to see tangible gifts be given to these kids, then you can know that your money is going directly to those kids in the form of clothes or school supplies. I mean, we just had a sorority over at Cal State San Marcos do an Easter basket campaign. So they spent Easter and made Easter baskets for all of the moms and the babies that are pregnant in Parenting Cottage. So many ways to connect. As a whole, as a community, get in touch with your church, get in touch with our organization. The more fingers we've got out in the community, the greater we can grasp the situation.
Realizing that it is, again, the concern of the entire
community. If people could realize that helping people is a gift, and it's something that we not only get to do but can do, it's very fulfilling. And it's one thing that I'm very proud of with my job is the fact that maybe I'm having a bad day, it was a stressful day at work, but you look at the kids that I'm helping and the things that they're going through and the progress that they've made. It makes my day seem a lot better.
Certainly, and to see the face of a child shift from sullen and withdrawn to expressive and
I'm getting
interactive.
Goosebumps.
Yes,
I see it every day. I mean, especially when we can get the little ones in. Like I said, seeing a scared puppy turn into a full laughing, running around, loving life child is a 1 in a million opportunity.
That's right. And it's not just that child, it's that child's ability to have impact on other children.
People. You see it all the time. I mean, and that's community therapy. That's one of the things that we find really helps is you put people together with similar issues. They can work in it together. You find advocacy in yourselves. You find a partnership there, and it's a lot easier to kind of get your way out of that.
Surely. If there's one primary point that you'd like to share, would you do so now, please?
Of course. I would just like to let your listeners know that this is a real problem. Please keep your eye out for it. Be brave. If you are suffering from abuse, please report it. You do not deserve what you're getting. And I would just say that collectively as a whole, we are so much stronger as a community. And when you can rehabilitate people young to be productive members of society, that only pushes us forward and pushes us forward together. So if I could just urge everybody watching today to pay attention to the people that you love and pay attention to the people that are that are strangers to you, because you never know who you end up helping, could have an impact on your life. And that certainly, I see people every day that I'm so proud of, that I'm a part of their life, a part of their journey to becoming better.
You don't have to be Mother Teresa.
You don't.
You don't have to be Princess Di.
No, not at all.
One person can make a difference in the life of another, and it's certainly crucial that we work towards supporting the lives and the nourished development of children in this community, and communities around the world, affecting not only today but tomorrow as well. We consider children who have lived through times of war. We've considered children who have lived through times of war in the household. To realize that until someone intervenes, then their lives are doomed to depression and other ways of antisocial behavior and the like. Shauna, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much, Pastor Harris.
And sharing with us and offering to us an awareness of the issue in our area. And we wish you well as you continue to do your work. Thank you also for watching today, and we are grateful that you have been attentive and will support development around awareness of this issue of child abuse. Until we're able to see each other again, may God bless you and keep you.